Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is the Blockchain Mathematician, where we discuss blockchain up to mathematics and much more, such as physics and science. Today's video we'll be talking about proof of work in blockchain, the basics of blockchain, and the basics of proof of work. So let's get started. Let's imagine two people. This one will be called John, and the other one will be Bob. He has crazy hair. This one will be Bob. So, John has a balance of 10 BTC. And Bob has a balance of 5 BTC. So what is this BTC? Well, let's let's think of the top coin on CoinMarketCap. If you're to search it up, it's Bitcoin. So if you were to look at Bitcoin, it has three distinct letters, B, T, C. Some would say N, but the Bitcoin decided to use B, T, and C. This forms, if you were to put it all together, BTC. And that's how you get it. It's a short form, or also known as the symbol for Bitcoin. So if you ever see BTC, that usually signifies Bitcoin. So now let's talk more about John and Bob. So John decides to give some Bitcoin to Bob. Bob decides to accept it. So John decides to transfer 2 Bitcoin to Bob. 2 BTC. Okay? So at the end of the day, John will have 8 BTC. Well, Bob will have 7 BTC. If you add 2 to both sides, that's what you'll get. So how can we use this in a block? So for today's video, for part 1, we'll be discussing the index and the data aspect inside of a block. Give me a moment. So picture all of these squares as blocks or pieces of information. So on each one of these blocks stores information of a transaction or a couple of transactions. In this case, let's talk about just one. So, all of these are connected, and I'll explain why in the next video. But today we'll be talking about the data and the index. Perfect. So, when John gave Bob the Bitcoin, we have to record that. And what do we need to record? First of all, we need to record who sent the Bitcoin. In this case, it's John. But usually, in crypto and blockchain, they don't just say the name. They use an address, which is usually pretty long and hard to read and hard to remember. But that is what computers use. And that's what we need to use as well. And Bob also has an address, and that's stored inside of the data. So, with that, that's the first part that we need to include for the data. Next, we need to include the amount of Bitcoin that each owned before the transaction was done. Say, since John had 10 Bitcoin, this would be recorded into the blockchain, and Bob had 5 Bitcoin. Therefore, that would also be recorded. The reason this is necessary is because imagine John didn't have 10, but only had 1, and he still wanted to send 2 Bitcoin. He wouldn't be able to, because then he would have negative 1 Bitcoin, which is not allowed. Therefore, John is valid, and he's capable of sending the 2 Bitcoin because he has 10. So 10 Bitcoin minus 2, it gives you 8. So the final balances of each will also be recorded. In this case, John had 8 Bitcoin, as I just mentioned, and Bob had 7 Bitcoin, as he gained 2 after the transaction was made. So, that's all recorded inside of the data. But there's also one more thing. So, inside of the block, there also has to be an aspect on when each of the transactions is made, so that it's easier to organize and to tell when each block is made, and you can see in a very easy and organized order what happened inside of the transactions. So you don't have to sort around, look for certain transactions inside of a messy blockchain. But with this new time aspect, you're capable of just reading through it fluently and understanding it very well. So, inside of this, you'll include a timestamp, which is pretty much when this transaction was first made, of 2 Bitcoin. Perfect. That's a simplified version on the data aspect, and we're going to be going into the index now. So, in this blockchain, say there's a lot of blocks from each side, and it keeps going from both sides. So, what this index tells us is the place in the blockchain that this block is located. So, let's say the index is equal to 20. That means that this block is the 20th block on this blockchain. And yeah, that pretty much is a very simplified version of what the index is. And the reason it's necessary is because it's very organized, first of all, as I mentioned with the data. And it just makes it much more easier to read and understandable. Alright, perfect. That's part 1 to proof of work in blockchain, where we discuss transactions, simple transactions. We discuss symbols. We discuss the data in a block, the index, in the blockchain, how many blocks there could be. Thank you. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.